No one has ever done it in space. This is a far more serious statement than it may at first seem. For those whose ideal solution to the inevitable resource collapse faced by our species this century is to get off the planet as quickly and efficiently as possible, the fact that not even the first step toward procreation has occurred off Earth should be alarming. After all, without procreation, our descendants in space will be our last descendants. Even if we turned our planet into a veritable baby factory to replace the lost bodies in our future space cities, we would be sending them out to die, if only of old age. On the most superficial level, it does appear that, even if no one has ever attempted it, the physical act of sex is possible in space. NASA is notoriously coy on such matters, but testimony from both astronauts and cosmonauts appears to bear out the ability to get it up while up there. This might seem surprising, as zero gravity is famous for drawing blood toward the head. But, according to astronaut Michael Mullane, when asked by Men's Health magazine in 2014, he claimed that while weightless he had, quote, a boner that I could have drilled through kryptonite. Cosmonauts are more open on such things, and even say the Soviet psychology department sent porn to their crews to enable them to fulfill their function. Alexander Levekin, when asked how sex happened in space, responded simply, by hand. Leaving aside the somewhat squeamish question of what happens to the resultant excretions, the act of copulation seems to be only marginally more complicated. Though the famous scene of James Bond attempting re-entry with Holly Goodhead at the end of Moonraker is likely impossible, as any action in space demands an equal and opposite reaction, so some form of restraint, sometimes called an unchastity belt, would almost certainly be required. Incidentally, there is one documented case of successful microgravitational copulation. It occurred in 1999 aboard a parabolic aircraft, colloquially known as a vomit comet, as part of the porn film The Uranus Experiment. I have not been able to locate second-hand accounts of how the act was accomplished, and being in the UK, I have reservations about giving my personal details to a porn site. So if anyone has information on the performance of the deed, please let me know. Over the course of astronautical history, only 15% of spacefarers have been women, but the recent intake has seen the ratio increase to parity. This isn't woke. It's necessary if colonization of space is to be viable in the long term. So the effects of space exposure on both male and female reproduction is of immediate practical import. If our future in space, as seems increasingly likely, is to be confined to space habitats, then the effects of space on reproduction, a topic about which we know shockingly little, must be addressed. In February 2026, a paper by a team headed by Giles Anthony Palmer of the International IVF Initiative examined the long-term effects of spaceflight as applied to human reproduction. The results were not auspicious. The most obvious threat from space exposure is radiation. Spacefarers are exposed to cosmic rays, solar storms, and radiation pits like Earth's Van Allen belts. NASA initially set maximum radiation exposure for astronauts at 50 millisieverts per year, or nearly triple the recommended dose for radiation workers. For men, temporary infertility results from 150 millisieverts radiation exposure, while for women, the amount is between 650 and 1500 millisieverts. Initially, due to an assumed higher risk from diseases like breast and ovarian cancer, NASA imposed stricter radiation limits for women, but when concerns were raised about hiring discrimination, changed it to less than 600 millisieverts over a lifetime. That said, if anything, men are arguably more susceptible to radiation. The testis, due to its rapid cell division, has increased chances of genetic damage. A dose of 250 millisieverts can disrupt spermatogenesis, though short-term exposure may be reversible. A 6-month stint on the ISS results in 54 to 108 millisieverts exposure, while a Mars mission would reach 1,070 millisieverts. The Martian surface exposes one to up to 330 millisieverts. These are all speculative, of course. As yet, not enough people, and certainly not enough women, have been exposed to space for sufficient time for meaningful study to be conducted. Cosmic rays, in particular, are noted to be uniquely dangerous, as they can completely fracture DNA, as opposed to merely cutting one side, as earthly X and gamma rays do. Studies with rodents suggest that exposure to radiation can reduce ovarian cells by between 60 and 70%. Another issue is, of course, microgravity. A Russian study found that sperm collected after 50 to 60 days of bed rest simulating microgravitational effects found both an increase in structural deformities and a decrease in motility, while a study involving rats showed massive testicular degeneration and cell death after 6 weeks in simulated microgravity. Despite this, many men have produced children after returning from spaceflight, and studies of the roughly 40 women who flew on the shuttle show no difference in pregnancy complications to control groups on Earth. Precise data on reproductive success, however, is currently unavailable. Testosterone does not appear affected by microgravity, though it has been shown to decrease immediately upon return to Earth. A 2018 experiment with frozen sperm on the ISS showed that capacitation, the final step in the union of sperm and egg, was significantly impaired. Information on women is woefully inadequate, but studies on rats suggest that prolonged microgravity produces failed periods and a loss of corporea lutea, the yellow bodies in the ovaries that produce hormones like progesterone. Another study on mice showed marked drops in oxytocin, the famous love hormone, even 18 weeks after microgravity exposure. A similar study showed that fertilization and birth rates were far lower in microgravity, 50% and 75% lower respectively, than in Earth gravity, while another showed that simulated microgravity led to abnormal cell development in blastocysts. There is currently no knowledge about infertility post-spaceflight, or about pregnancy complications. However, simulations have shown that microgravity inhibits the growth, migration, and implantation of zygotes. The parallels between aging and space exposure have been known for decades, and have ominous implications for both male and female reproduction. But the incidence of radiation-induced menopause or sterility is still not known. To date, no one has carried to term or birthed a child off the Earth. No one knows if you can, and no one wants to be the first to learn you can't. Can a womb shield a fetus from radiation? Can a baby be born without gravitational load on its muscles and bones? I know. From the start, you were probably imagining something a bit more bawdy and fun. But the fact is, reproduction is deadly serious, and we need to learn how to do it off Earth if we are ever going to live there.